big ball. Going for the big shot, and he hits it.
That's batted into the air, intercepted, and the Bears are going to win it.
There's a ton to talk about. That's why we're talking about doing 3 episodes next week. I mean, the draft's getting closer. We are technically at this point 13 days out by the time you're listening to this. Welcome to the Halas Beat, brought to you by the Bear Report. I'm Usayd Koshul. He's Nick Whalen. Check us out on Twitter at Halas Beat, @_Nick Whalen, and at Usayd Koshul. I mean, dude, where do we start here? Because there's the NFL Network report about not a lot of teams wanting to trade up in the draft. The Bears have the capital to make that happen. I know you've got a new theory about the offensive line. Everything's in full swing at Halas Hall. And then we got to talk about the rest of the NFC North. But how's it going first off?
It's exciting, man. I mean, NFL draft season and the NFL draft, that's my favorite time of the year. So it's weird that I'm almost sad that it's going to be over soon. So I enjoy all this stuff, the rumors leading up to, and, you know, making mock draft simulators like a second job, all that stuff I love, man. So you tell me where you want to start, because this is all stuff I love to talk about.
Okay, I figured let's just get the Bears' new theory about the offensive line out of the way. I am curious to know this because I've seen a lot of the stuff that you've been posting. I mean, I'm glad that you're on the Carson Schwessinger hype train right now. That is definitely awesome to see. But talking about this O-line, so I was having a conversation with a couple of the guys that I coach with, and I started just rattling off and being like, hey, this is going to be the pick at 1, this is going to be the pick at 2, you know, then 3, 4, and so on. And again, if there's anything you guys know about me, if you are new to the YouTube channel or you're new as a podcast listener, I mean, I've pretty much had every single Bears first round pick correct over the last, I want to say, 7-ish or so years. It's really like 4 to 5 years because the Bears didn't have first round picks for 3 of those years. But I start to look at this whole thing, and the more that I talk about the Bears O-line, the more I get convinced that it's going to be Armand Membou at 10 or Will Campbell, the less I lean toward Ashton Genty. And then the more that I'm like, hey, Tyler Warren, Colson Loveland, I wouldn't be mad if they took either of them. But what's your outlook as it pertains to the OL? Because my theory is it's Membou or Campbell if one of the two is on the board.
Yeah, so the new theory is this, and again, this is just because we only know what we know, and a lot of it we're assuming things like Dennis Allen is only going to use defensive ends that are so big. Like we don't know, we're guessing. You know, we don't know what Ben Johnson wants, and so this is the new thing I think that we need to consider. They traded for Jonah Jackson. Jonah Jackson got extended. Didn't have to. Joe Thuney got traded for. He did not get extended. Drew Dahlman got signed. They drafted Darnell Wright. He's locked in there. Why hasn't a Joe Thuney extension happened yet? And so my new theory is, what if they do not extend it, Joe Thuney? Let's go down what that road looks like. Okay. So they bring in Thuney to basically make sure the O-line is good for a year, and then they're going to draft and develop a guy to take over. If you think of it in that light, Jonah Jackson's going to get paid. Drew Dahlman's going to get paid. Darnell Wright is going to be a, 4th-year guy next year. I'm trying to think of after this year. Paying another interior O-lineman would be very expensive. I think that would be the most expensive interior O-line this year, much less next year. So having a guy on like a rookie contract would kind of make sense at, you know, whether they move Jonah Jackson back to right guard or they draft a new right guard. So if you think of it in that area, he hasn't been extended yet. And Jonah Jackson was like right away, like, oh, we're going to extend this guy. So makes you wonder if they have something different there. So then I've been thinking of, I'm like, okay, if that's the case, then 39, 41, or 10 has to be an O-lineman that they're going to maybe develop to take over next year. Now, again, I know people are like, Joe Thuney's so good. He is good. But if Joe Thuney costs $26 million plus the 17 for Jonah Jackson, plus the 15 for Drew Dahlman, it's a lot of money for interior line. So that's part of the theory. And then the other part is this, Usayd, and I think people know this. I'm team. I don't like short arms. and we know, and you look at all these tackles, and a lot of them don't have long arms. But we thought it was going to be. I mean, you talked about this a bunch. Ben Johnson gets hired. We look at Detroit's O line. We're like, they're going to be big road graders. Look at what Detroit has, et cetera. And they got smaller guys that can move athletically. Will Campbell is a very athletic, and if you look at his RAS, super athletic guy. Membu's athletic too, and some guys have him as a guard. Dane Brugler's the beast. If people don't read that one out of the Athletic, it's pretty good. He said, and he had commented, there's some people that have him as a guard. So the theory of drafting a guy at 10 that could maybe be a tackle or a guard makes way more sense to me if Joe Thuney is not extended. So what do you think of this theory?
I mean, I love the theory first off. And so I did a little bit of a research project that I forgot to tell you about, which is completely my fault. But if you go to our Bear Report off-season sheet, I mean, I decided to basically do a little bit of a data analysis and finally put my, I guess, master's / future doctorate degree to use. So here's the deal, okay? The research project I did was I went through and I looked at the Bears draft picks, and then I said, where specifically were they picked? What were each prospect's RAS scores? And then the average of those. And then I broke the average down by position, okay? So the Bears O-line for the average for the O-line in terms of the RAS scores with the 5 players that Ryan Poles has drafted over the last couple of years, right, has been a 8.3 out of 10. Okay. Now, what this tells me is that the Bears are clearly looking for more athletic offensive linemen. I think that's no secret at all. But if you look at the guys that they drafted over the last couple of years, such as a Braxton Jones, a Karan Amagaji, I would even put Zach Thomas in there, Jatiri Carter too. They want guys that are freakishly long in terms of their arms. Now, I will say though, I do believe that this year the draft is a bit of an exception in that sense because again, guys are pretty athletic, but they don't have the ideal arm length needed. And so that ultimately kind of becomes this conundrum of like, you know what? The Bears are in a position to where they're looking to win now, and they have to fully believe that drafting and developing a prospect or taking one of the tackles at the very top is the move that has to be made. And again, let's just be honest about something. Maybe the Bears have a little trick up their sleeve, which I'm going to add to your theory here. Maybe the Bears are sitting there and saying, hey, we'll take a Membu or a Campbell if they're there. And then we will go ahead, and we know Braxton Jones has experience playing guard dating back to his days in college. Hey, Braxton, we're going to make you compete for a guard spot. And then what we're going to do is we'll give you a cheap, 1 or 2 year deal next year. We'll give you the starting spot. If you really want to be here, great. And then we're going to go ahead and you get to be the future, left guard of this team. Okay? Like that is genuinely another, I know it's crazy theory out of left field. That's a theory that I have. But I also think that you kind of look at it, like you mentioned the numbers, right? So you mentioned $26 million a year. Let's just say Joe Thuney gets that. Yeah. Drew Dahlman's making $15 million a year. Jonah Jackson's cap hit is $17 million a year. The salary cap is going to be $220, $230 by next year, I believe. That's $60 million locked away on 3 offensive linemen. Interior guys, roughly about, I think the numbers you mentioned are about 56 to 58 or $59 million. And so my issue with that is it's like the 3 O linemen are not the only guys you're going to pay. At some point, you're going to have to make a decision on Rome Odunze. At some point, you're going to have to make a decision on Caleb Williams, which I get is far down the road. But as the cap goes up, you're also going to want to roll over some space. At some point, you're going to have to decide if you want to pay Kyler Gordon. At some point, guess what? A Braxton Jones extension is coming. At some point, you have to maybe talk about Roshan Johnson. So you're going to get more expensive, which means that you're going to have to save money, and getting a good rookie that you can draft, develop on a cheap contract is the way of the world in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. And that's why I think maybe if they don't sign Thuney to this big deal and he becomes like a Keenan Allen, player. He's here 1 year. You trade a future fourth for. It's not a huge price to kind of stabilize the O-line or help Caleb. It makes sense. So I'm gonna give you two guys. So we talked about maybe 10, right? But if 10 does not become the O-lineman for whatever reason, and honestly, I'm not sure Will Campbell or Armand Membu last to 10. Okay. Here are two guys to kind of keep an eye on 439 or 41 that could be potentially tackles, but most likely interior O-linemen. So the first one, Donovan Jackson. I know that we've talked quite a bit about liking Ohio State prospects, the guys that they're going to bring to the pros. His RAS, again, relative athletic score, y'all, it's out of 10. And they measure everything that is available to them in terms of size, in terms of they have like explosive, they have speed scores, they have agility scores, all those kind of go together. He doesn't have a complete profile, but his is 8.99, which is very good RAS. You had said 8.3 was the average for polls, and his arm length is 33.5. For a guard, that's really good. And then another one is Jonas Savannah from Arizona, he could play right tackle. I like him as a guard. He's got zone experience, which I like. 6'4", 324. His RAS is 9.12, which is also very good. And they have him for a top 30 visit that we saw this week. So to me, this comes together a little bit more when you say that they do have a visit with Jonah, right? He comes in. It's like, oh, okay, why? Maybe they'll have two guards named Jonah, which would be fun. But I'm just trying to piece together more things when we're getting small data pieces. And I'm like, why haven't they extended him yet? Doesn't make a lot of sense. And then why do they have this top 30 visit with a guy that I don't think he'll be there at 72? So it's like, okay, well, maybe you put those two things together. They're going to save some money that they can spend on Kyler Gordon or someone else. And then that's how they're going to keep the team youthful moving forward.
Yeah, and it gets interesting to me, which keeping this team youthful moving forward is also a roster building conversation about, let's just say the Bears decide that we're going to move up the board to get our guy. Well, they have the draft capital to make it happen. You look at the top 10, there's not a hell of a lot of guarantees. You do have some teams in there that, will want to go ahead and potentially trade back. I start to look at the draft order and let's be real here. The phones are going to be ringing. There's not a lot of teams that are obviously incentivized to trade up. We know that it takes two teams to tango. But what are some teams that the Bears could possibly strike a deal with? Well, guess what? I think that if you are the Bears right now, New Orleans, Carolina, the Jets, and the Raiders, as well as Jacksonville, have to kind of be on your radar. Now, depending on how far...
I think you could go earlier, man. I think you can start at 3. And start moving down, because if the first two, you said you've been talking to the kids about it. To me, I think the first two are locked in. It's Cam Ward and Travis Hunter. The Giants, they're not. I mean, Abdul Carter is the best player left. They have 2 DNs. Actually, they have a third that's not bad either. Do they trade down? You know what I mean? So I think you can start the conversation at 3, but I think everyone wants to move down. So really, it's kind of an open plate for hey, if you want the pick, but what's it going to cost to get up there?
Yeah, I will say this. So let's talk. Okay, so the New Orleans conversation is tough because you don't know who they're going to take, right? They've got so many roster holes. You're kind of in a position to where I would almost rule the Saints out. But if they go Shedeur Sanders, maybe they're just sitting and hoping that Shedeur Sanders falls, which that ball bounces New Orleans' way. I would say let's start with the Carolina Panthers here. The Bears-Panthers have this history of trading. Maybe the Bears strike a deal that is, hey, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move up 2 spots to get the 8th overall pick. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we will land our player that we absolutely positively want. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is give you guys the 39th overall pick in return for it, right? So that pick that was originally Carolina's goes back to Carolina. Then all of a sudden, Carolina kind of gets to replenish their draft capital. That is a deal that I think is going to happen. Which,
hold on, what do we get back? You're saying 10 and 39 to move up to 8?
Yeah, so the Bears basically give up 10 and 39 to move up to 8. And then what they do is looking at the Carolina draft capital. Bears get 74, let's say, right?
Okay, I was going to say that they have to get something back in my mind. Mm-hmm. Let me look what the trade charts say here.
I would say like 74 or in the fourth round, 111, right? Like if you're really desperate as the Bears to move up, then you go and you take 74. Or you go ahead and I think, do a second round pick swap. And what you do is you say 10 and 39 for 8 and 57, for example. That is a pretty solid, I think, swap as well. And I think the 10, 39, 8, 57 swap makes a little bit more sense.
I think it does too. Yeah. In terms of the numbers.
So Carolina, and again, for the Bears, like 41-57. So having 10, 41, 57, and then 74. I'm sorry, 72. Not necessarily the worst deal on the planet, right? So that's one team right there. Now, I will say this. Carolina's got a ton of 5th and 6th round picks, or 4th, 5th, 6th round picks. So that's a team that I look at and I'm like, hell yeah. Okay, now, here is, I think, to me, the one that is more, I'm not going to say like polarizing, but I could totally see this happening as well. And then I'll let you kind of go. So the Jets pick at 7th overall, okay? The Bears pick at 10th overall. Well, New York's got 42-73, and they've got 110 and 145. So all of a sudden, if you're the Bears, maybe the Jets make just a little bit more sense for you. Because then what you do is you say, hey, you get the 10th overall pick. We're going to take the 7th overall pick and give us the 73rd overall pick, okay? So let's just say 7 and 73 for 10 and 41, for example, okay? If you're the Jets, that works out for you because you get back-to-back picks in round 2, so you guarantee get 2 guys on your board. And if you're the Bears, you get 72 plus 73. Okay, now you get back-to-back picks in the 3rd round, which we know Ryan Poles loves his 3rd round picks because he loves his sort of high upside draft prospects that are freakishly athletic.
So in terms of one thing I think overall, just talking about this year, and we talked about this, there's a lack of blue chip players. And when you trade up for a quarterback, there's always going to be that premium, just like Carolina had to do, the 49ers had to do, get Trey Lance, like, etc. When you don't have to trade up for a quarterback, the price isn't the same. So again, the draft, right now I have the draft pick value charts up, and it's a guide. It has to be that way. I feel like trading up is going to be cheaper than in past years in terms of like, if a team has like right now, I look, okay, the Bears first 10th pick, their first round pick is 1,300 points is what it says. The Jets pick is 1,500. So that means the Bears have to make up 200 points. I'm not sure that they have to make up 200 points in a draft where it's like the Jets could take a group of 6 guys, and the Bears could take a group of 5 guys. Like, I think most teams are thinking that way. And so I don't think that the premium is going to be there to move up. And that's why I think I'm interested in it. When normally, I've told you this before, I am team trade back all the time because I want more chances to get players. But if it's actually going to be 150 points to move up instead of 200, you know what I mean? Like if I'm saving some, then it gives me more ideas or more interest in doing it. So I have to talk through something first because I know we're talking about like trading up. There are just some things that I think people, Ashton Genty is what a lot of people want, and they think of like the fancy things, right? Let's talk about you talked about the Jets, okay? And again, this is not me trying to insult your intelligence, okay? Do you even know the Jets right tackle right now?
The last I checked, it was Morgan Moses, but I know Morgan Moses is not there anymore. I know they've made investments and they took what's his name last year, Fashanu. I know Josh Myers is there as well. I believe it's Okafor or Max or Mike Mitchell, right? One of the two.
No, dude, that's good memory. Yeah, so Okafor's on the team. Max Mitchell's, I think, backup left tackle is what our lads has. That's what I use for depth charts. They have Carter Warren, a 4th round pick in 2023 is their starting right tackle, which I don't know how comfortable I would feel with that one. So to me, it's like the Jets should take Campbell or Membu and put him at right tackle if that's there. So then before this, I was looking. I looked, man, and again, like I love football. I'm always on it. I'm always looking at guys. The Raiders secondary, I think I know 2 of the 5 starters that are projected right now. And none of them, well, they signed Jeremy Chin. That's one that I know, okay, from Washington. Jacorian Bennett was a 4th-round pick, I think, out of Maryland. He's one projected starter. Another one is DeCameron Richardson. I don't know him. Darnay Holmes is the nickel, and they signed Eric Stokes from Green Bay. I don't know any of those guys. You're telling me they can't draft Will Johnson or Jahdae Barron at 6? I know people think of Genty, right? The other one is their right tackle is DJ Glaze, a 3rd-round pick in 2024, and I'm like, you think they can't go tackle? So you start thinking of why Chicago would jump up. You know what I mean? And who these teams could start taking, because that's a part of it too, right? Last year they talked about, hey, should we move up to get Rome? Okay, what are the projections of who do we think is going to go here? It's a big game, and it's all kind of guessing. So I think part of this is trying to figure out who those teams are going to get, as well as who we're going to move up for.
I just want to make one quick correction to something you said there. That would be former Green Bay Packers 1st-round pick from the University of Georgia, Eric Stokes. That is what it would be, because we'll talk the NFC North in just a minute here, but you bring up a really good point about the Raiders. I know they just released one of their cornerbacks, Jack Jones, I believe, and so that is something to where I'm like, all right, well, you brought up a really good point that I haven't even considered. As much as Bears fans sit there and are worried about the Raiders about, hey, they're going to take Ashton Genty, and then all of a sudden Ben Johnson's not going to get his running back until the 2nd round, and, all is lost in the world. It's very realistic that the Bears take a Will Johnson, which, again, RAS thing here, I don't know if you want to pull the spreadsheet up and see, but get this, dude. You look at the RAS rankings for the positions that Ryan Poles has drafted, the 3 corners that he's taken in 3 drafts, the RAS has been a 9.09, okay? A 9. So that he loves the Bears under Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham, love their freakishly athletic cornerbacks, okay? And then safety, which we'll have to talk about next episode. I mean, the average of that is an 8.91 in terms of the RAS score. So that's why I say don't pencil out a possible corner, don't pencil out safety. But then also the big thing is, the Raiders kind of are a team that can spoil the Bears draft plans in the sense of it's like, hey, yeah, they can go ahead and they can take Will Johnson or Jahdae Barron. Then they can go ahead and they can take an Ashton Genty. They could possibly choose to address wide receiver. Not that it's a need for the Bears, but all of these things with these teams like the Raiders, do eventually end up impacting the Bears, because at some point, I mean, one of the top 15 guys on the consensus boards is going to be in a Bears uniform this year.
Right.
But there's one team that I think is not being talked about enough that I think we should be talking about enough when it comes to the Bears possibly trading up with. I mean, let's go to 5th overall with the Jacksonville Jaguars, okay? Liam Cohen's there. Joey Gladstone's there. Gladstone obviously comes from the Rams organization. Cohen really kind of grew up in the Rams organization too. And Jacksonville's sitting there with 536, 70, and 88. Okay. That to me, for the Bears, is sort of a sweet spot as well, because you move up significantly in the draft. I don't know what the difference is on the Jimmy Johnson draft chart between 10 and then 5 in terms of the points value.
It's 400 points. So if you look, 41 is 490 points.
Okay. So you're basically moving up 5 spots for a 2nd-round pick. Now, here's where I think things get sweeter, okay? Is that if the Bears really want to sweeten the deal, me obviously knowing the stuff that tends to get around the league, and some of the things that I hear, teams are probably going to want, if the Bears move up, teams are going to want the higher of the 2nd-round picks, which is going to be 39. And the reason for that, obviously, is because what you basically have is in that 29 to, let's just say, 39 range, 39, 40, 41 range, there's always these players that should be going in round 1 that end up obviously slipping. And it's quite likely that a team's willing to take a gamble and say, we'll take 39 off your hands because we hope that a guy that we've ranked as a mid to late first rounder is there because teams grade prospects differently. But then with Jacksonville, let's just say the Bears trade up. So Bears go to 5th overall. It's 10 and 39 for, let's just say, 5 and the 70th overall pick, for example. Okay? That right there honestly works out for the Bears. For Jacksonville, you still get your 3 picks in. The Bears still have 4 inside the top 75. And then for Jacksonville, you get 10, then you get 36, and now you get 39. Okay? Works out for you perfectly, and you still have the 88th overall pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the thing is that, I mean, because that one makes more sense to me because I don't think that you're going to have to pay premiums. I just don't think that you're going to have to do that this year because it's like Shador's probably going to fall. I mean, that's the rumor, so that would be, I think, a discounted version of trading up. But like in most years, everyone wants to trade down, but no one wants to trade up. So I think that might be where it starts. I mentioned, the Giants and New England, those could be spots. To me, if you're moving up to 3 or 4, you're moving up for Abdul Carter. And if you're moving up to 5, 6, 7, 8, it's likely either Mason Graham or Ashton Genty. But I saw one, a couple different scenarios. One was the Bears trade up 10, a second, and like a future third to move up to, I think, 3 to get Abdul Carter. And then another one I saw, they gave up like a future one to move up. And I'm like, I'm not moving up a future one to move up. I'm just not. But I'm curious what you think, man. Would you give up 10, 39, probably the first of the 2 seconds, which you're correct, and a future third to get Abdul Carter?
I would. And here's the thing. Because to me, at some point, you've invested a lot in the defense, and you have to start saying, we're going to put the finishing touches on this defense so that next year, when we fully believe we can take the jump from being playoff team to true Super Bowl contender, we are investing everything we can into the offense. Okay? That is genuinely what I'm thinking. But I'm also thinking of what is the Bears defense going to look like in a couple of years when and if Montez Sweat and Jerron Dexter don't get second contracts with this team, right? You're still going to want to have the guy that is your franchise cornerstone building block type guy. But you talk about moving up for Abdul Carter. I mean, it obviously takes 2 to tango. Looking at the New England draft capital, the tough part about that is they don't have as many picks as the Giants do, right? So the Giants, in a sense, are kind of desperate right now because you look at a team that doesn't have a long-term future at quarterback, okay? They've turned the roster over. They've got Malik Neighbors. I had made an argument for Travis Hunter on the Giants as a corner, but I said Travis Hunter is going to make a hell of a lot more money as a wide receiver in the league than he would as a corner. I don't see Travis Hunter and Malik Neighbors coexisting. Let's call it how it is. Why the Giants should trade out? Because you are basically going into a year where there's a fire sale, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this too. But if you're New York, I think that having 10, 34, 39, 65, and 99, that gives you 5 picks in the top 100 is a hell of a lot more appealing than just taking one guy. And they've already got a pretty solid rotation of edge rushers as it is.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who makes the decisions there, because Joe Shane, Brian Daboll, like this is it. Like you brought in, to me, I don't think they can even go with Shedeur Sanders because if they did, with signing Russell Wilson, with signing Jameis Winston, the writing's on the wall. Like we saw Chicago drafting Justin Fields did not save Matt Nagy's job, and it didn't save Eberflus's job taking Caleb. I mean, rookie quarterbacks generally struggle, and so to me, like they need to do well. So I think them making a splash and adding Abdul Carter to that team, which I think Abdul Carter, by the way, is the best player in this draft. I think I would have him over Travis Hunter. And his medical check with his foot came back well today. People are wondering about that one. The reaction fracture, or whatever they want to call that one, a stress reaction. But you add him when you have Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and I can't remember the third guy. I'll have to look it up here. But you're going to get some bonus on top of that one. But they need like other pieces in there. I don't know that they're going to get that with it. I mean, maybe they could go Mason Graham for all I know. But they don't seem like they're in a place for this one guy that's going to make a move. I feel like they needed like, hey, we got to fill a bunch of holes. So I think trading down does make some sense for them. I saw some trade, Marcus Mosher, I like him on Twitter. He had San Francisco moving up, giving up a future 1 and 11 to move up for Abdul Carter with the Giants. And I'm like, okay, that makes some sense too, because, you know, they're building, they're getting extra capital. They could then use maybe that future first for, you know, to get another late first or something too this year if they're really trying to save their job. So and again, like you said, it takes two to tango. I think it's interesting when we're trying to get into the minds of these other teams with why they would want to trade down and kind of who they're targeting. So the last thing I have about this before we move on to anything else is, so I would want to move up for Abdul Carter, Mason Graham. But when I look at these teams, Abdul Carter isn't falling past 4. Mason Graham, when I look at D-line help, Giants could take him. New England could take him, especially with Christian Barmore's blood clot issue, even though they signed Milton Williams. Jacksonville could take him. The Raiders could take him to pair with Christian Wilkins. That would be kind of fun. And the Jets could take him. So I don't see Mason Graham falling to 10 either. So you would have to move up for either of those guys. But Genty is different, because I think that he could fall to 10 potentially. And moving up would just be securing that we have the guy that the reports are we love. And when you look, you know, the Bears pick is 1,300. Their third round pick is 230. In theory, they should be able to move up to potentially even 6, just giving up the 3, right? That'd be a discount for sure, 7. Would you give up 10 and 72 to move up to, let's say, even 7? Because, you know, New Orleans could take him. Dallas could jump in front of the Chicago to take Genty. Would you give up that 3rd just to guarantee that you got Genty at 7 or 8?
Yes and no. And again, dude, here's why. Because I look at the whole situation and I'm just like, I want Ashton Genty, but I also don't want Ashton Genty because, again, there's a lot of tread on those tires at this point. No prospect, I understand, is really guaranteed a second contract. But I also am a firm believer that when you have a... Where's my O-line hat? I got to get my O-line hat on for this, okay? I don't know where it is, which is support your local O-line coach, okay? But here's the deal. All right, I'm a big believer in the fact that any running back can be really good as long as the O-line, the offensive line coach, and the play caller are on the same level, okay? Like, that to me makes it different. So Ashton Genty to me is appealing, but I'm not going to lie to y'all. Like, I'm just going to come out and say it. If I was in Ryan Pohl's chair, if I was in Ben Johnson's chair, knowing this running back class, Ashton Genty would not be my first pick, okay? Which I understand people are going to use the, Jahmyr Gibbs argument, but, like, look at Jahmyr Gibbs at Alabama. Look at Ashton Genty. You're talking about Mountain West competition versus SEC competition. You're talking about a player who is... Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the better pure running back prospects to come out because he's got burst, he's got speed, he does have the agility, he's got the ability to kind of be a Swiss Army knife. You know, he gets into space, he's a very patient and runner who relies a hell of a lot on his vision, okay? The hard part for me about Ashton Genty is, to me, Ashton Genty is patient. He's got speed. He's got vision. He can certainly be a home run hitter. But I also see him in terms of just pure power having a lot more than Jahmyr Gibbs did coming out of Bama. Okay? Mm-hmm. So I look at both of these players and I'm honestly like, everyone's saying Ashton Genty is going to be Ben Johnson's Jahmyr Gibbs in Chicago.
No.
I don't see it that way at all. I think that honestly people are kind of falling in love with Genty as a prospect, which again, you're allowed to do the same way I'm in love with Colson Loveland and Tyler Warren. But I also don't think that if a trade up happens, to go back to your original question, it should be for Ashton Genty. Because I could make the argument that Travion Henderson from Ohio State can be just as impactful as Ashton Genty.
No.
In terms of your like in terms of specific scheme fit and whatnot. And I know you and I disagree on this topic.
Man, let's get the boxing gloves on, man. Here we go. Have you seen the rumors that they could take him at 10?
Yeah, I don't buy into that. I think that's a smokescreen. That is someone in the organization pumping out whatever the hell they want to.
Or it's an agent.
Exactly. Which, little bit of a side note here, I'm going to say this. Can Henderson and Genty have a similar impact for the Bears? Well, I think impact depends on like what context, right? I think that in terms of upgrading, let me clarify here, okay? If you're talking about upgrading the running game and making it more explosive, okay? Genty's going to give you that. Henderson's going to give you that. But they're going to give that to you at different levels, all right? If you're talking about impact in the offense as a whole and making the other 10 players better, Ashton Genty's going to give you that. Travion Henderson's not going to necessarily give you that.
To me, they're just very, very different prospects. And this isn't you, but I feel like a lot of people love the speed prospects at skill position players when you don't get to use that much in the NFL. And so to me, the big difference is if you think of, and again, I use comparisons, y'all, to compare you so you understand skill sets. It's not career arc, right? I'm not saying this guy's going to have, Abdul Carter is going to be the next, Khalil Mack. Like, I'm not talking about career. I would just talk about archetypes. To me, Ashton Genty is Maurice Jones-Drew / like LaDainian Tomlinson, a guy that can run inside, he can run outside, he's a really good receiver, he's a do-it-all type of back. Travion Henderson isn't. And Travion Henderson struggles between the tackles. He struggles understanding the nuanced and just cerebral parts of zone running, right? Because as you said, O-line guy, coach, gap scheme is easy. I read, the block off of this one guy, I cut and go. And we know what Henderson loves to do. He loves to bounce and go outside and use his speed. That's fantastic in college. It's very different in the NFL when people are faster. But zone, which is what I think like a Caleb Johnson type running back is better at, who's not a very good athlete, is he understands reading the blocks and the second level and can set up those blocks, and he's patient. And Henderson, when it gets muddy, he struggles. And to me, I think that's something Ben Johnson actually won't like, despite the rumor of Eric Bieniemy really loves Travion Henderson. But Genty is universal. Like I watched, I think 3 or 4 games of Caleb Johnson yesterday, all 22 stuff. And I watched 4 of Ashton Genty. Ashton Genty, man, like I'm with you. It is a deep running back class. Okay. He makes himself small, only takes on half a defender. Even if there's no hole, he makes more things happen than any back in this class. And when it is there, he has the juice to hit the home run too. Like, and I think he's good at pass pro. He can catch. Like, to me, he's everything. And if I'm drafting running backs this year, if Nick Whalen is the GM of the Bears, I would take Genty at 10, or I would wait until 72, because I don't think that Travion Henderson is that much different in terms of a round than and I've told you this before, a bunch of guys I can get in round 3 or 4 or 5. Like I would rather the gap between a D end and that, or a D tackle in that group. Like I would rather get more value later on or with other positions. But here's the other part to this conversation, which I think is super important. So if Ashton Genty's picked at 10, the odds of him hitting, like I know people say it's a 50-50 coin flip. It's not. Right? Because every prospect is different. We know Genty's a blue chip guy. Travion Henderson is not a blue chip guy, for example. The odds of Ashton Genty hitting and becoming a top 10 running back in the NFL, I think is darn near 80%, right? The injury, right, is probably the worst part. Maybe the competition level is harder, right? But if we took Tyler Warren, or if we took Shamar Stewart, or whatever, I think the percentile of them hitting is lower. Now, again, D-end is a premium position. So I think part of this conversation is like, how much is the percentile of you think these guys are going to hit and reach the return on investment? And then there's the premium position in terms of what the salary difference is, right? And also in terms of who's going to help you win now, which we've talked about too. Like they said, 2 32-year-olds. So I think Genty helps you now. Colson Loveland probably isn't going to help you as much right now. It's going to take some time. O-line. So to me, I think it's such a huge conversation. that I think is just fascinating, to be honest. That's why Bears Twitter can't agree on it and we don't even have like a big need. It's like, oh, we can kind of pick whomever, but we have this big conversation all the time because I think it's a lot of fun.
2 quick notes here. There is someone out there that is listening to this right now that is probably rolling their eyes saying, thank goodness these two geniuses are not GMs of the Bears. Okay. We appreciate you. We salute you, but please tweet at us for what you think regarding what the Bears should do. And then the second thing is this. I fully believe that if Ashton Genty was not in this draft class, there would be a lot of people. First off, some of y'all would be lost. Number two, there'd be a hell of a lot of y'all that would go out there and just start talking about it has to be Warren or it has to be Loveland. But again, it's a deep tight end class as well. Okay, let's just real quickly here, dude, take some time to discuss what the rest of the NFC North is looking like. Because Detroit obviously is a team that was, to me, one of the better teams in the league this year. I think that they're primed to take a step back. You mentioned they're looking for edge rusher, which I fully believe. Aiden Hutchinson's coming off that gruesome injury. The Packers continue to scout first-round wide receivers, but it's not like they're actually ever going to take one, in my opinion, because if you look at this draft, I mean, some of these receivers, like a Tet McMillan, like a Luther Burden, like a Trey Harris, they're going to be off the board. Then you've got the Minnesota Vikings, who had the most entertaining offseason of any NFC North team. That's not the Bears, in my opinion. So I know very slim pickings there. You obviously over there, you don't have... You claim that you have your quarterback of the future, but then you signed Jonathan Allen. You went ahead and you also signed former Bears draft pick Travis Bell to a contract. Sam Darnold's no longer in the picture. You got Theo Jackson's Aaron Jones, Byron Murphy, obviously. So what do you think the rest of the NFC North is doing?
Yeah, so let's just go team by team here. So if we stick with Minnesota, yeah, they spent a lot of money. And when you look at the guys that they spent money on, there's injury risk, right? They got Will Fries. Will Fries played 5 games last year. Jonathan Allen has had some injuries. Javon Hargrave has had some injuries. I think that they improved their team, but they took on risk. And the other thing is they're different than any other team in the NFC North because they only have, I mean, they traded away picks last year to get Dallas Turner. So they have the 24th pick, and then they don't have a second, and then their third, they don't have a third, their regular third, they have a comp third, which is later. So they're a team that I think would, if anyone wants to, they would trade back because like, man, we need to get more picks to help, I think, fill in this roster a little bit more. In my opinion, the Vikings are a team that could go safety, right? They lost Cam Bynum. They could go D-line because a lot of those guys are older. Jonathan Allen's older. Hargraves is older. Harrison Phillips is older. So some kind of an interior D lineman. Think of like Derek Harmon, right, would be great there. Kenneth Grant would be a guy that they would want. Walter Nolan, those types of guys would make sense there. Corner can make some sense. We've talked about, Trey Amos, Siobhan Revel, that those types of guys later on. But also, their O-line, their interior O-line is been signed guys like Ryan Kelly, Will Fries, but there's injury risk. So if they want to get a Gray Zabel, right, to give depth and a guy to take over eventually, that can make some sense too for me.
Yeah, that is a really good point. Harrison Smith been there since 2012. He's signed a 1-year deal this offseason.
How old is he? Do you have it up?
Yeah, like 36 to 37 years old. Like he's up there. So that's why I think, when you talk about some of these safeties, Vikings should be targeting a safety in round 1. Malachi Stark's cream of the crop, but obviously you never know. Okay, the other big thing is this. Let's talk Green Bay. Okay. I think that Green Bay, considering where they're sitting, they're not going to fall in love with any of these receivers. The Christian Watson experiment has not worked out for them at all, in my opinion.
Are you telling me the science of evening out the hamstrings didn't magically fix everything?
No,
I heard about it all off season. Didn't you hear about that? Like, man, it was science.
I mean, a lot of people people don't really understand strength and conditioning until they see actual football teams work out in the weight room. Okay, but here's the thing. So Green Bay spent big on Aaron Banks, which I know in your opinion was one of the worst contracts. They got Zach Tom from last year, Sean Ryan, Jordan Morgan are there. Okay. They could use another receiver just because they want to go ahead and they want to add to the receiving room, give Jaden Reed a legit running mate, which Jaden Reed played at a school here in Illinois, 8A high school, for those of you guys that don't know. And there was a whole scandal with him too that got a athletic director fired at a certain school. But that was about 7 or 8 years ago at this point. Okay. Yeah, I get everything on everyone. All right. So the other big thing, dude. Okay. The other thing is this, though, is let's just say Green Bay says, you know what? We can't get more explosive as a receiver. Let's get more explosive at the tight end position. I mean, I could totally.
No, they can't. They can't. They're too deep there.
Yeah, with Tucker Kraft.
Well, no, and they spent a second on Luke Musgrave 2 years ago too.
Yeah, well, the Musgrave thing was at the time lauded as a genius pick. I don't think it's worked out.
I know. Sorry, I have to. I mean, just that'll be tough to invest there. But I think Green Bay goes one of a few directions. There's rumors that they're going to move Jordan Morgan to left tackle. He played right guard last year. If they do, then they'll put Sean Ryan at right guard. If not, they could go tackle. That could be like a Josh Connerly Jr. type of a situation there. Or if someone falls, I don't think a tackle will fall that far. You know, Kelvin Banks, maybe. They could go there. They could go receiver that you're talking about. The guy that like makes sense there is maybe like Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. But they need speed there. Like you talk about Jaden Reed. I like Jaden Reed since he was at Western Michigan before he transferred to Michigan State. But he only plays as a slot in 11 personnel. They need an outside guy. And Romeo Dobbs is a free agent after the year. So they're actually a lot more thin there than people think. And Watson's going to miss at least half of next year, if not more. And the other one would be corner. Such a mystery, man. You go to Green Bay, they think Jair Alexander's going to get cut or traded. Jair Alexander's camp doesn't want to be in Green Bay. Yet he's still on the roster. He hasn't played a full season in a long time, but he's 28. They signed Nate Hobbs. They've got Carrington Valentine, Keyshawn Nixon. They're really thin at corner. They're good at safety. They're thin at corner in terms of I think they could draft a corner there. And then D-line. They didn't get pressure. Rashawn Gary signed that contract, hasn't lived up to it. Lucas Van Ness drafted a 13th overall, hasn't lived up to it. Kenny Clark in the interior is not doing as well. They spent a first on Devontae Wyatt, hasn't lived up to it. So another pressure guy inside, a corner, someone with speed at receiver, or left tackle. They could go a lot of directions in Green Bay. That's what makes it kind of interesting. The funny thing, though, man, before I turn over to you, is the one thing that always happens with the Green Bay is the guy I think they're going to take, the guy that makes the most sense. It's not him. They draft a guy that's like athletic, but like the next tier down. Like every time they do this, it's like they could have drafted Graham Barton last year, but like, nope, we're going to take Jordan Morgan. I'm just like, why do you do this?
So you mentioned Jair Alexander and corner came to my head. First off, that range that they're picking in, because they're at like 24, 25 in the first round. Perfect territory for a corner. Okay. Mm-hmm. The second thing is this is Jair Alexander. Green Bay could save $17 million and then incur just $7.5 million in dead cap if they make him a post June 1st cut. Okay. So that's the first thing to know there. So if they take a corner, I think we see Jair Alexander get designated as a post June 1st cut. I understand we are a Bears media outlet. I am going to be very brutally honest with all of you guys. Okay. I've been saying this since they won the Super Bowl back in 2010 and have never made it back. Okay. Green Bay, to me, top to bottom, is the most underachieving team in the league over the last, let's just say, 2 decades. Okay. And if you're a Packers fan and this thing comes across your, timeline or YouTube algorithm, first off, welcome in, okay? The second thing is I said what I said, and you can't prove me wrong at all because your team's mired in first-round exits, and I'm saying that as a football person, not necessarily as a Bears fan. All right, getting into Detroit here. So Detroit's interesting. They had that big exit, so you don't really know how hungry they are. The big thing with Detroit, I will say, is this, though. I mean, there's a lot for them to sort of figure out, right? They're still picking at 28th overall, which is great. They've got 28 and 60, then 102 and 130. I look at them right now and I kind of say, okay, you know what? They had a free agency class, which was a lot of just like, we're adding depth guys, right? Avonte Maddox, to me, the most notable guy that they added in free agency. Levi Onwuzurike, obviously, coming back as well. Dan Skipper, too, that I was kind of bummed out the Bears didn't get him. But I look at Detroit, and I kind of say, might just be time to upgrade that pass rusher room again, because you need someone to kind of push Marcus Davenport, right? Looking at the linebacker core, I love Anzalone. I love Jack Campbell. Do they decide to add someone to that room as well? Or do you maybe say 28 is a great place to get a good cornerback, even with Terrion Arnold on the roster, and Enos Rakestraw Jr. So they're a team that I know a lot of people are looking at them and saying, well, it's a pretty decent roster for the most part, but I could definitely see them going defensive line there just to kind of make that group stronger. Because ultimately, the Lions took a step back last year after Aiden Hutchinson went down because the pass rush just was not as effective. I think that that's the position they target.
Yeah, they were beat up by injury, which really sucks. Because I mean, even as a Bears fan, I was rooting for Detroit. It was a cool story, and just hasn't worked out the last 2 years. I don't see cornerman. They signed DJ Reed to a pretty good deal from the Jets after they lost Carlton Davis. So I think that's going to be their answer there. And honestly, I kind of like their DB room now. It's something they've put a lot of money into. You said Terrion Arnold, DJ Reed. They got Amik Robinson, but then they also have Brian Branch, who's awesome, and then we know Kirby Joseph from Illinois. That's a pretty good room. But the end, like it can't just be Aiden Hutchinson, who was arguably defensive player of the year track before he got hurt, as the only guy getting pressure there. So yeah, I think the end. I mean, you look later on, if that's like a James Pierce Jr., hey, someone that can just tee off and go after the quarterback, that could be a destination. The other one I see is, again, we love their O-line, right? But they lost Kevin Zeitler, right? A guy that we were talking about in Chicago. Is that a destination for them? Because they're going to replace him with Christian Mahogany, who's a day 3 pick who did okay last year filling in as a rookie. Is that where they maybe, hey, we're going to dress and we're going to get a Tyler Booker and we're going to put him in there. We're really going to get more physical and add another first round pick into this line. Taylor Decker's not young as a tackle. Are they going to try to start, developing a replacement for him? I would say it's going to be trenches, which I know people are like, Detroit's so good in the trenches. I think that's a spot where they're getting long in the tooth. They could upgrade or they could get more pass rush.
That is a really good point right there. I could totally see them deciding to address the offensive line. I mean, hey, maybe the Bears and Lions strike a draft day deal that sends Christian Mahogany to the Bears for whatever, a day 3 pick, right? But that is all because, again, Boston College connection, you got Ryan Poles, you got Ben Johnson. Kind of have to go ahead and just mention even though I see that as being kind of an unrealistic scenario, being a legit possibility. Anyways,
I got one thing. Sorry, this is one thing I got wrong on a podcast. One of our first ones is, so the Lions' new offensive coordinator, it's not Ben Johnson, obviously, and there's all that turmoil, is John Morton. And I was incorrectly assumed, and I shouldn't have. I assumed Johnny Morton. Now, again, I know you're a lot younger than me. Do you remember Johnny Morton, the NFL player, or no?
I do remember Johnny Morton, the NFL player. By the way, dude, don't be like, oh, you're so much younger than me. You're not that old. Okay? You're a young guy.
I feel old. But anyway.
Look, people, listen, I'm going to get this out of the way real quickly.
Hold on. I'm not done.
Okay, go.
So that's not who their OC is. I thought it was Johnny Morton, the former player. It's John Morton, who's just a coach. He was with the Lions a while ago. He was passing coordinator for the Broncos. So I incorrectly assumed that. I don't know if other people did. I wanted to make sure that they got the OC right in Detroit. It's not the former NFL player.
Well, I mean, good on you for correcting it. Here's the deal. Okay, people, listen, I'll be like 90 years old, man, and I will be like, yo, I'm not even old even then. All right, people sit there and they're like, whoa, I'm getting old. And I'm over here. I'm just like, hey, you had 60 something years of, you've lived whatever, 60, 70, 80 years of life. that's a nice long life. So take it all in instead of, making yourself age and whatnot. So, if someone calls you old, just respond with like, man, I'm never getting old. All right. You could be old in age, but you could be young at heart. All right. That's
I'll
my
work
little.
on it. I'll work on it.
I'll convince you. Trust me. Okay, I will convince you. Make sure you guys are following us on Twitter at Usayd Koshul, at _Nick Whalen, at Halas. Check out the Bear Report website as well. A lot of really good stuff dropping there too. We're gonna continue dropping scouting reports on there. We are gonna be back next week with a few really good episodes as well. So make sure you keep it locked in. Like, rate, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts from. Bear down, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure with you this week. I know the episodes are getting a little bit longer, but after the draft, we will try our best to kind of tone it down. Other than that, we will see you guys next week.